What is up, guys? Randomodium here with your Week 5 Fantasy LCS prediction video. This video I'm going to break down all of the matchups for NA and EU LCS for Week 5. And I will be discussing some of the matches from Week 4, so this is your spoiler warning. But overall, I'm actually really happy with how Week 4 went. I think that I was accurate on most of my predictions. The only thing that really kind of blindsided me was Unicorns of Love. They played way better than I thought they were. Wound up upsetting H2K. So yeah, I'll definitely have to adjust for that. But I think that my algorithms and my methodology is working very well so far this split. And I also did a lot more number crunching to try and come up with better algorithms, and I had some very positive results. However, the downside to that new algorithm is that it's very dependent upon accurately predicting the match result and also predicting how long the match is going to last. So I need to predict who's going to win and how quickly they're going to win. And it takes a lot of time to do it. It takes a couple hours per team. And every week I'd have to be spending a couple hours just to update the data. So I'll be doing that, but it's not going to happen overnight. But I'm definitely trying to give you guys the best information I possibly can. But yeah, in this week 5, things are not going to be as clear cut. It's definitely a much harder week to predict. One last thing. So I've been doing my Learn from the LCS videos. Those videos have not been doing very well in terms of views and comments and things like that. It doesn't seem like there's that much interest in those videos. And really, I'm trying to figure out why, to figure out if that's a series that I should just discontinue, or if that's a series that I need to change to make better for certain people. So I'm not really sure why people don't necessarily like those video series. So if you check those out and let me know how I can make them better, or if you think I should just stop doing those videos, please do that. That'll definitely help me out in putting out the best content I can. And some other options I was thinking about was possibly doing a more math-focused video for Fantasy LCS, kind of breaking down the numbers a lot more for those people who really enjoy that kind of stuff. So if that sounds interesting to you, let me know, and I'll try out a video on that and show you some more of the math behind everything. But yeah, let's get into the Week 5 breakdown. All right, so the executive summary, kind of the TLDR, if you can't watch the entire video. Easy points this week: TSM, Immortals, Cloud9 on the NA side, and then H2K, G2, and Fnatic on the EU side. The teams that you should avoid, your bench warmers this week, are Echo Fox, NRG, and Phoenix on the NA side, and Unicorns of Love, Giants, and Origin on the EU side. And then for the risky players, the players that could do well but also could do poorly, on NA, I've got Envy, CLG, Apex, and Liquid. And then on the EU side, I have Schalke, Splice, Vitality, and Roccat. And I'll be going over all the risky players this week and telling you who I think is really worth starting this week. So that's kind of my plug for you guys to continue watching this video, is find out who the risky players are. So these are my rankings for the teams. On the NA side of things, nothing really changed from last week. You can see the number next to the team name. That's what the ranking was last week, from my opinion. So yeah, it's identical to what it was last week. The only change that I made is that NV, they're still the number 4 team in my mind, but they definitely proved that they're nowhere near the same level as Cloud9. So they're kind of I moved them down a tier. I moved them down into the blue tier rather than the red tier. And then on the EU side, I feel like Fnatic, with their consistent performance, has shown that they're better than H2K now, especially with H2K's loss in Week 4. So Fnatic is now the number 2 team in EU. I still think Schalke is the number 4 team. And then there was a little bit of change up in the bottom half of the teams. I still think Splice is number 5. But Origin and Vitality look like they've been doing better. Roccat has looked like it's been doing worse. And I have seen some promise from Giants and Unicorns of Love, but it hasn't been enough for me to justify moving them up in the rankings. The crucial matchups this week for NA, Cloud9 versus Immortals. This will determine who is the number 2 team in NA. And then Team Liquid versus Envy. This will determine who's the number 4 team in NA. And then on the lower half of the teams, Energy versus Echo Fox. Whoever loses this game is pretty much out of contention for playoffs. So those are the big, impactful games this week. And then for EU LCS, Fnatic versus G2, that's really going to determine who's the best team in EU. We've got Splice versus Unicorns of Love, and also Splice versus Vitality. This is going to really determine the pecking order for those those last couple playoff spots. And then Giants versus Rocket, I think is going to be a really close game, and whoever loses that game is going to have a very slim chance at making the playoffs, but probably won't make the playoffs. All right, nomenclature. If the win, tie, loss is in white, that means I think it's going to be a normal game with normal point values, so 30 to 35 minutes in length. If it's in red, that means I think the game is going to be a stomp. And what that usually means is that the winning team does not get as many points as if it was going to be a close game. And then if it's the losing team, they typically don't get any points. So you definitely want to avoid the teams that are going to lose badly. And then for the blue games, that means I think that the game is going to be very close. And those are the games that where players get a lot of fantasy points. Those are the games that you definitely want to look at. And there's definitely higher risk, but there's also higher reward in those games. And then next to each player, I have two letters. The first letter is what I thought they were going to be last week. And the second letter is what they actually were last week. And I can kind of help you track how well I'm doing week to week as far as my predictions are concerned. All right, so for the teams, my S tier teams this week are TSM, H2K, Immortals, and Schalke. TSM should have a pretty easy victory over Phoenix, and typically in team points, a stomp in the team points is usually really good, which is why they'll probably be the leader. H2K had a really bad week last week. I think they're going to rebound strongly, and they have a pretty easy week in Origin and Rockets. They should be able to win both of those games. And then Schalke, I think there's a lot of point potential in Schalke because they're going up against Vitality and Unicorns of Love. Those are both teams that they should beat, but they should be pretty competitive games. So it should be very favorable for Schalke as far as fantasy points is concerned. For the A tier teams, I have Envy, G2, and Fnatic. I don't think there's going to be any surprises there. Envy had a really rough week last week, but this week it is a lot easier for them. They will be challenging Team Liquid for kind of that number 4 spot, but I think that they will win a very close match against Team Liquid. And then for the B tier, I have Cloud9, Splice, and Vitality. Splice, I think, also it's another one of the teams that has a lot of point potential. I have them tying Unicorns of Love and Vitality, but those could easily become wins. I think that Splice is good enough that they could beat both Unicorns of Love and Vitality. But I'm conservatively saying that they're going to be ties. I think at least one of them will probably be a tie. All right, for C tier teams, I have Unicorns of Love, CLG, Apex, Liquid, and Echo Fox. A lot of this has to do with the difficulty of their schedules this week. I think that Apex could perform very well, but unfortunately they're going up against Immortals this week, and typically teams don't get a lot of points against Immortals. And then for the D tier teams, I have Giants, Rocket, Origin, Energy, and Phoenix One, which I don't think there are any surprises to there. All right, for top lane, my S tier top laners, I have Steve at the top. I know that's a very big surprise, but he's actually been flying under the radar a lot. He was the number 2 point scorer last week for top lane, and Schalke just has a really favorable week. So I think he is the top point scorer for top lane. I also have Seraph, Gamsu, and Huni. Seraph has been hit or miss based on the week, but when he has a favorable week, he really performs. I think they have a favorable week this week. For the A tier, I have Odo, Hanser, and Impact. Hanser could be higher, but I think that they're actually going to dominate Phoenix really quickly, and he's not going to get as many fantasy points, which will drop him down to A tier. And then Odo is going to be recovering off of a bad week, and I think he'll return back to being A tier as well. For B tier, I have Ray, Xpec, and Wonder. G2 had kind of underperformed last week as far as fantasy points are concerned. I think that they will do better this week, but they're not going to be S tier or anything. And then Wonder has been incredibly consistent. He's been pretty much B tier every single week. So if you're looking for a conservative pickup, a lot of the Splice players, week in, week out, have always been around like B tier. So they're very consistent. For C tier, I have Sachi, Darshan, Cabo, Lorlo, and Soaz. I don't think there's any surprises there. All these people have been kind of bouncing around the C range. They might go a little bit higher from week to week, but they're about C range on average. And then for D tier, I have Smitty J, Quas, KFO, Parang, and Zig. I don't think there are any surprises in that area either. All right, for jungle, S tier, Rainover, Yankos, Trick, and Spirit. I think that this will make sense to most people. All these teams have favorable weeks, and they're all very high point scorers. For A tier, I have Medios, Sven, and Gilius. I think TSM has a favorable week. I don't think Sven is going to be S tier just because I don't think he's ever been S tier. He's always been kind of around that A tier. Medios could be S tier, but I don't think that Cloud9 is going to beat Immortals, which is why I have him at A tier. And then also for Gilius, I think Shaka's going to get a ton of points this week. So he's usually not an A tier player, but I'm bumping him up to A tier this week. For B tier, Trashy, Shrimp, and Dardoch. Dardoch's been playing a lot better, obviously on Liquid. However, they've got a very difficult week with Cloud9 and Envy. I think they're going to lose 2 very close games, which is why Dardoch is not higher on the list. If I thought that Liquid could beat Cloud9 or Envy, Dardoch would be A or maybe even S tier. And then, as I said before, the Splice players have been very consistent, so Trashy is a very good B tier kind of person to pick up. C tier, I have Proxen, Xmithy, Amazing, Mighty Bear, and Hard. I don't think there are any surprises there. And then for D tier, I have Move, Airwalks, Maxlor, Santorin, and Nori. Nori replaces Sentinel for Phoenix 1. And then as far as Roccat is concerned, Airwalks is a huge liability for Roccat. If you look at the Roccat games, Airwalks is just off, and he needs to perform better. He needs to play up to his potential because he looked a lot better earlier in the split, and I don't know what's going on with him, but he's been hyper aggressive. He's been getting caught out a lot, and he's really costing his team a lot of objectives and possibly a couple wins. So hopefully they straighten him out, and Roccat starts looking like they did in the earlier weeks. For mid lane, S tier, I have Fox, Pobelter, Bjergsen, and Fevbin. I have Fox at the top because he's been doing a ton of fantasy points, even when things have not been favoring Schalke, and this week things favor Schalke, so I think he will be the top point scorer in mid lane, and I think that the other 3 are pretty self-explanatory. For A tier, I have Jensen, Perks, and Ninja. Jensen is definitely an S tier player. However, I think that Cloud9 will lose to Immortals, which will drop him down to A tier. Perks had a horrible week last week. I think he will recover, and they will have a much better week this week. And then Envy, of course, also had a horrible week, but I think they'll recover, and Ninja will also be A tier. B tier, Senkux, Ryu, and Nukeduck. H2K has a really favorable week, but Ryu has not been putting up that many fantasy points, even when H2K has a favorable week, which is why Ryu is only B tier right now. C tier, I have Keen, Huhi, Phoenix, Froggen, and Exile. Phoenix has been playing better. He could possibly be higher, but I don't favor Liquid this week, which is why he's C tier. Froggen is a very talented player, and I think that they'll be able to beat NRG this week, which will push him up into C tier. And then Keen has actually been performing really well, but unfortunately Apex has Immortals this week. And then for D tier, Power of Evil, Knight, Betsy, GBM, and Pyrene. Alright, AD carry, S tier, Mr. Rallis, Reckles, Sneaky, and Sven. Yet again, I have Schalke at the top because I think that this week really favors them. And like I've said before, it's not a guarantee that Schalke is going to be at the top. This week really favors them for fancy points, but there's always risk involved. And if you look at both of those games, Vitality and Unicorns of Love, I both have them in blue, which means I think that they're going to be close games. I think Schalke can win them, but if there's an upset, that means that their fantasy points are going to plummet. So there's a lot of risk with Schalke, but I think there's a lot of reward with Schalke this week. Reckel, Sneaky, and Sven are definitely more consistent picks. However, I don't think they have as high point potential as Rallas this week. For A tier, I have Kabi, Lod, and Wild Turtle. Kabi and Lod have actually been flying under the radar a lot. They've been putting up a lot of fantasy points, and I think they both have favorable weeks this week. Wild Turtle, despite Immortals playing very well, has not been putting up as many fantasy points as Kabi and Lod have in quite a few of the weeks. For B tier, I have Freeze, Double Lift, and Police. Double Lift should be higher than this. He hasn't been getting as many fantasy points. Actually, Bjergsen's been getting a lot more of the fantasy points. So that's why I have him at B tier, but he could be higher this week. Freeze also should be higher. He just hasn't been putting up that many fantasy points. HK as a team has not been putting up that many fantasy points. So even though HK has a favorable week, I think he's only going to be around B tier this week. C tier, I have Apollo, Fabi, Stixay, Veritas, and Keith. I don't know if Fabi is starting. I don't know if Piglet is starting. Liquid has not disclosed what's going on with their AD carry. Fabi has started the past 2 weeks, but they've not said that Piglet is benched or Piglet is off the team or something like that. So I would be very cautious starting Fabi or Piglet this week until we get a firm confirmation from Team Liquid on who's going to be the starter. I don't think anybody else on the C tier list is going to be a surprise. And then for D tier, I have Steelback, Xpeke, Sunstar, OHQ, and MASH. And most of these guys are down here because they all have really difficult weeks, and it does not favor them at all. Even though they're good players, they don't have good weeks, and they're not going to score that many fantasy points. All right, and finally for support, I've got S tier, Spraddle, Mithy, Adrian, and Yellow Star. I think G2 is going to come back very strong. They're going to get a lot more fantasy points this week. Already discussed Schalke and how they have a ton of point potential, but they are higher risk. And then Adrian and Yellow Star, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. A tier, Biofrost, Evander, and Hakuo. Reason why Biofrost has dropped down to A tier is because TSM will have an easier week this week, which will result in them actually getting less fantasy points because the games will not last as long. And then I think that Envy will have a much more favorable week, which is why Hakuo is back up in A tier. B tier, I have I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I don't think anybody knows how to pronounce his name, but the support for Splice, Mickey X, he's been pretty consistently around B tier, so I think he'll be around B tier again this week. And then Kasing and X Special, I think, are pretty self-explanatory why they're in B tier this week. For C tier, I have Aframu, Big, Smoothie, Matt, and Hillsang. For Cloud9 with Smoothie, I would be hesitant to play them because he is splitting time with Bunny Fufu, which means that typically they're going to get a lot less fantasy points than the rest of the players on Cloud9. And then for D tier, I have Hustlin, Raze, Hybrid, Kiwi Kid, and Gate. I don't think there are any surprises on that list. So once again, in summary, the teams that are going to be kind of easy points, the players that you can just pick up, and they should get at least decent fantasy points this week, are going to be TSM, Immortals, and Cloud9 from NA, and H2K, G2, and Fnatic from EU. If you're looking for more high-risk, high-reward players, you'll be looking for people on Envy, CLG, Apex, and Team Liquid from the NA side. For the EU side, Schalke, especially Schalke, Splice, Vitality, and Rockhat. And then for your bench warmers, the teams that you want to avoid, the players that you want to avoid are those on Echo Fox, Energy, and Phoenix One on the NA side, and then Unicorns of Love, Giants, and Origin on the EU side. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on the channel, please subscribe. Please check out that Learn from the LCS video series. Give me your input. Let me know how I can improve it. Or if you would like to see me do a different type of video instead of those Learn from the LCS videos. I definitely appreciate all of your guys' feedback, and I'm always trying to improve myself and give you guys the best content that I can. But I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. This is Randomonium signing off.